Oh,
go.
golly, the road is getting bumpy,
Because
'cause
I got
I got me some
friends
friends
that
that
just
just
can't
can't
get
get
along.
along.
Oh
Oh dear,
dear, when the
when the
team
team
is
is
getting
getting
grumpy,
grumpy,
the
the
trick
trick
is
into getting
getting
through
through
it
it is
is
singing
singing
this
this
song.
song. We're not getting any better. So hello and welcome to Remake Hot Take, the podcast where we play studio executives pitching remake ideas of our favorite and new media. I'm Marriya Schwarz.
And I'm Brooke Rees, and this week we are doing the new Percy Jackson and the Olympians series that is premiering on Disney Plus. I don't know how many more episodes there are to go, but as of right now, the last one that we watched was the we take a zebra to Las Vegas,
I
the
think that's
Lotus
six.
Hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 6 episodes. I don't know. I feel like with new series, usually it's between like 8 and 10 episodes. So we probably have a couple more to go for this first season. But we wanted to jump in there and kind of do a bit of an early review because we've been hearing a lot of buzz about it and we've both been watching it these last like month, this last month or so. So yeah, Marriya, what are your overall thoughts on this, or what's your relationship with Percy Jackson and how come you wanted to do an episode on it?
I don't have a relationship with Percy Jackson, like the character.
Intimately.
Yeah, intimately. He has actually said that he will sue me if I make another allegation like that. Um, so um, so anything I do say, I do have my lawyer in the back who will nod along. Um, but I read Percy Jackson. It was sixth grade. I was at a new school and everyone was obsessed with Percy Jackson, and I had never heard of it because I went to private school, and I was like so adamant and like fitting in. So my mom and we went out and bought all of them, and I think the final one was out at that point, or maybe we got it later. That's the only one that I have in like hardcover. But my mom was really interested in it too, so we read them together.
Aw.
Yeah, thank you. And so then I became obsessed with it, and I became like the Percy Jackson person.
Mhm.
The um I don't know what to call it. Just like every school has the Percy
The
Jackson
expert.
go-to, yeah, that you can go to. Wasn't paid, but was an informal position. And
An internship, if you
an
will.
internship, yeah, that didn't
Wait, real quick. So, like, what were the kids at the private school reading that they weren't in the Percy Jackson universe? How come that was like
like
a public
Shakespeare.
school? Okay, so like private school, they were like, "Oh, my father just got back from I don't
War.
know, the bank. And he's forcing me to read just another Shakespearean play. And
Hmm.
then you got to public school and you were like, "Oh shit. They're they're going even further back. They're going to the
Well, I
Greek
feel like it
gods and
was like also
goddesses."
like clicky books, like very prep school oriented books. Well, because they didn't teach us to have an imagination there. So
Hmm.
I didn't actually experience um
Joy.
joy or personal thought until public school, I think.
Okay. So it
um,
was an awakening for you
yeah,
on many
yeah.
different levels.
But so I finished the whole series in like a week, 2 weeks,
Mhm.
and then I cried for like 3 days because it was over, and my mom was like, you can just reread them. So then I just like started just rereading them over and over again.
Mhm.
Um, I started running fan sites for Percy Jackson, Hunger Games, and Harry Potter. And it was like so much easier. It was mainly Harry Potter based because like Percy Jackson, we didn't really have much content at that point to work with.
Mhm.
It was just basically like random sections of the book, but there weren't like memes. There wasn't any movies to go off of at that point,
Mm.
which we thought was a curse, but was actually a blessing, and we did not know. Um,
You didn't know
and
what was to come.
but then me being known as the Percy Jackson girl ended up being what led to my fall, an Achilles heel, if you will, because when we all went from middle school to high school, some of the school systems chose to have their required reading Hunger Games. Some of them chose Percy Jackson,
Mm.
and my school system chose Hunger Games. But a friend of mine that I had in middle school, theirs chose Percy Jackson. She's like, I know that you're the Percy Jackson um worker, intern at the school, so can I borrow your copy? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then I never saw it again. And now I've had to buy a new version that doesn't look like the rest of my books, and it's fucking stupid.
No.
So Meredith, if you're watching, um, what the fuck? And I still live in the same house, so feel free to come on by. Um, because that was bullshit. So then, and then I read all of the other, well, most of the other ones. I think what was the issue was I didn't really keep up with, there were so many spin-offs. So I
Mm.
read most of the Egyptian mythology series. I read the first one of the Norse god series. Because that one I think I went to like the Unleash signing of that one. So I definitely think I have that one. I read at least the first or second Apollo series. I read most of Heroes of Olympus. I don't think I read the last one. And that's just basically I just couldn't keep up with like going to a bookstore and buying things. And I don't even know if like ebooks were even like fully a thing yet.
Mhm.
And I also was a child, so I didn't have like transportation. So
Multiple
I wasn't like
barriers.
just casually in a Barnes and Noble often. Um, but then when the movie came out, that was like a big thing, and my family and I were all going to go together to see the movie, and it was just trash, because like they made the entire movie's premise around like the pearls or whatever, the pearls in
Mm.
into the underworld, which was like not a big deal at all in the book. And it was just awful. It was aged up, and like it
Mhm.
kind of defeated the whole purpose of a quest if like your main characters can just drive themselves everywhere. Like the whole point was like we don't know how to get anywhere. And then in the movies, it's like Grover is 40 and he has a truck. Like, so that made me really mad. I went home and I got out two large pieces of paper and I made a whole Venn diagram based on memory of what I could remember was different from the book to movie. They changed a bunch of things, like including like even what subject Mrs. Dodd taught in school. And I was like, why would they even change that? Like, why was that even relevant? Why was that? That was like, I was like, that is vindictive. That one was personal to someone. Um, and yeah, it was a big thing to like hate on the Percy Jackson um movies. That was like a way into the crowd. And all my friends were like, I hate it. I'm writing letters. And then another girl was like, yeah, I'm sending death threats. And we're like, whoa, that's maybe a little too far.
Someone's like, I'm contacting my congressman, and then your other friend is like, I'm cutting up letters from a magazine and
That was like
threatening their family.
my real first introduction into mob mentality. But then I think it was maybe junior or senior year of high school, or maybe it was sophomore year. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It was definitely high school. Um, all my friends were talking about that Rick Riordan was coming to a nearby high school, and you had to like go to Barnes and Noble and buy his newest book, and then they would give you like passes to go and pick up the signed version and do like a little like he would give a presentation and all of that kind of stuff. And so my mom travels for a living, but she was like fresh off a plane, and I was like, we have to go. And I guess I didn't have a car, so I needed her to drive me jet lagged, and she did. And we bought the
Mm.
copy of the book, and um, but then I'd never owned a Camp Half-Blood shirt. So we went to Michael's, and all they had was a neon orange shirt, and I was like, I guess this will have to work. And then the day of the event came, I'm standing in line looking like a freaking idiot because I'm neon orange and it is not the right shade. And then we went in and he did a whole like presentation on
That's
like
so
how he came
cool.
up with Percy Jackson. So like he started out as a teacher. Um, and I think he wrote like a bunch of like inappropriate books first. And he was
Like
like, no one
smut?
read those. And then he like had a whole thing about like, and then this is my Annabeth, and it's like all about his wife.
Aw.
And then there was like this big moment where he was like, he made the announcement that I think it might have been Heroes of Olympus that he announced. I don't think it was Heroes of Olympus. I think it might have been the new Apollo series, but he was like, and we're going back to Camp Half-Blood, and the auditorium erupted. And it was just like
Oh my God.
incredible. And then we all got little styrofoam shields that said like Magnus Chase, which was um, the Norse series, and then we picked up our signed books. And I tweeted about it, and Uncle Rick retweeted me, and that was great. So that is my history. I haven't reread them in a while, so coming into the series, you're telling me that like things aren't as realistic, and I'm like, I that kind of rings a bell, but I honestly am so like removed from it
Hmm.
because that internship opportunity did not become an actual job. So I kind of severed myself a little bit from the fandom. But what about you, Brooke? This has been an emotional roller coaster for you and your interests. So
Yeah.
talk about your history with Percy Jackson because you liked the movie, and hopefully now you have clarity on why you were wrong. And if you want to make a formal apology, because I know you've talked about
Hmm.
enjoying the movie before, the floor is yours.
Yeah. I have to say that, wow, I feel like you had like a better like childhood than me in in many ways. Like, I don't know. I guess maybe it's just like living in like in close proximity to a larger city because I didn't get like any opportunities like that ever. And I feel
I mean,
like
it was
you
like the only time, and I mean, he did come to like the National Book Festival in DC once, but I missed that. And I was like really upset about it that didn't even hear about it until it had happened.
Yeah.
I know that Maggie also went to that same tour as well. So I think it went to a bunch of different places,
Yeah.
just not, I guess, where you live.
Not in rural Pennsylvania. Rick, what the fuck? Yeah, and I feel like I don't know, like, the ethics of letting your kids be on the internet earlier, but I feel like you at least like had like a rich community of people that were into hardcore fandom stuff. And I feel like
Mhm.
I missed out a little bit. Like I feel like you still like are engrossed in fandoms and like you had that like experience growing up with like Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, and all that stuff. And I feel
I
like
definitely had online friends to the
yeah.
point where, and it's like we've kind of broken touch. And one of my best friends, her her pen name was like something related to Annabeth. So love her. Hope she's doing well. She lives in Canada. And we were like best friends. And like to
Hmm.
the point where I still like I miss having online friends because
Hmm.
that is kind of the level of friendship that I can keep up, which is just like casual messaging, and no one invites me to go get coffee because I don't like to drive. Um, but like I'm so far removed where I'm like I could have been talking to a middle-aged man, and
Yeah.
I could find out years and years later, which could be fun, but please continue.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, obviously there are dangers of kids being on the internet and potentially be like groomed by older adults, but I think that you saw like the good side of that. And I know a lot of other people that did too that had like I think it's like every kid that was like on Tumblr in the early years, like because I was never on Tumblr, never had the Tumblr experience. I think I said last episode like I didn't get a Facebook until I was like 16 or 17. So I was pretty late to the game, but I know like a lot of kids that well a lot of now 25-year-olds that like reminisce about the strangers that they were best friends with when they were like between the ages of like 10 and 15 growing up. And I feel like when it's surrounded in the fandom encapsulation, like it feels like a safer like happier place where you guys all got to talk about it. But even like my in real life friends, I feel like the only time that I remember like us obsessing over something was like Hunger Games and Harry Potter. Those were our two big
Mm.
ones. And in terms of Percy Jackson, I remember like now that I'm reading it for the first time, my friends are like, yeah, I like read that and I was totally obsessed with it. But I think like my friends were more into like school like grades and like sports and stuff. Like we really truly like we literally just talked about like homework and tests a lot of times, and then like Hunger
Have
Games
you
were a
read the
big
latest
thing.
College Board handbook?
Like literally. Like we or into sports or into like YouTube and stuff. We were all into YouTube a lot, but never
Oh, I
really.
think Percy Jackson took over our sports slot. Our sports slot was very empty.
Yeah, we were like all in the swim team. My friends were all like varsity sports players. So
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
Poseidon? Very, very
We
Poseidon core.
very Poseidon core. I don't want to say that we're all sons and daughters of Poseidon, but we were all on the swim team. Most of them anyways. But yeah, so like really the only like super fandom I ever had was like Harry Potter. All my friends were into that. We had multiple like Harry Potter parties, and even then I started out watching the movies since I was like whenever they came out I was like 5 years old or whatever, and then watched all the movies. It was a big deal going to the movie premieres, but I still had never read the books. And I didn't read the books for that until later in life either. I think I started out on like a camping trip when I was 16, read those books, then did the audiobooks. Hunger Games was the only experience I've had where I read the books before and then saw the movies later. But like you said, it was kind of like a couple year gap that I had read
Mhm.
the books originally. So I didn't have any like big qualms with Hunger Games either. But now to get to my relationship with Percy Jackson. So literally like my first introduction to like who Percy Jackson was and like the issues with the movie was like you and Maggie, so like my college friends.
Working on the clock.
Like you and Maggie, your unpaid internships being full-time Percy Jackson movie haters, and you had like we'd been texting in our group chat and you were like Rick Riordan news like update, like sound the alarm, like there could be a series like 3 years ago. And I was like, I'm Googling Rick Riordan. I was like, what are they talking about? And then I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, I had liked the original movie. It's like a movie about, an action adventure kind of young adult movie. Saw it when it came out, so I liked it. Had no idea of the the horrible relationship between Percy Jackson fans lurking beneath the surface.
You didn't know
So
the lore.
I didn't know the lore. I did not know the deep magic. But I liked it then. And is it Dylan? No, Logan Learman.
Logan
Logan
Lerman.
Letterman. Learman or
Logan.
David
Logan
Letterman.
Letterbox.
Logan Letterbox. He
Logan
is partnered.
Lerman.
Yeah,
Alexander
Logan.
Daddario.
Yeah,
And
Alexandra.
I don't know. I think the guy who played Grover, I feel like he like found God or something and he's like
Really?
become very, I don't
Didn't
know. I
didn't pursue
stumbled on his
acting?
social media a little while ago. Um, and I was frankly concerned.
Uh-oh.
So
Like, that's not good. But yeah, Logan Learman, and he's very hot. So I liked
yeah.
it. And
I feel like
Alexander,
Logan Lerman took on the same role as like Josh Hutcherson. I mean, not in like the
yeah.
short king kind of thing, but as brunette YA leading men and then
Mm-hmm.
who slowly fade out. And maybe we just need to bring Logan Lerman back. Like if someone could make a whistle at it, maybe that would be enough
Oh,
to do it. I know that he is somewhat still here. Like
yeah,
he's not with us right now, but
you must not be on my Twitter because every like his girlfriend like releases like a new photo of him maybe once a year, and everyone on my Twitter feed goes absolutely batshit crazy because he had like some gray hairs and
oh yeah.
some like gray facial hair. And as someone who is also prematurely graying, I'm like, "Ah, yes, he looked beautiful. We need that representation."
I do
So,
remember the big moment when everyone, and I don't know if they ever really were, but like Logan Lerman and Alexandra Daddario were dating, or everyone thought
mm,
that they were, and so they like family photos were very poured over on social media of them sitting on like opposite sides of a couch.
yeah. So yeah, that was the whole history. And then Marriya said the Percy Jackson series is coming out, like you should check it out. And I was like, okay. And so checked it out like around Christmas or whenever it released, the last like 6 weeks. And so I got like 3 episodes in, maybe halfway through what's been released so far. And I was like, oh my God, this is so good. And then I was watching it with my roommate, Megan, and she had read the books as a kid, and it was one of her favorite series, along with I feel like another one that's kind of like a dark horse of the fandom is the Aragon series.
Oh,
That
oh, that one
one's
also has a really bad movie
yes,
adaptation. I did
that's
meet him at National Book Festival, Christopher
see.
Paolini. And he was really kind, and he finishes every reading with doing a cartwheel. I guess he has a really interesting story, which I won't really go into, but he was like homeschooled his entire life, and so he graduated super early and he didn't know what to do. So he just started digging holes, and then his family was like, you can't keep digging holes.
That
And
sounds
so
like
then he
the
wrote a
most
book.
homeschool thing ever.
Yeah.
He was like, what now?
And so then he wrote a book, and I think he independently published Aragon, and he like went by hand and went to a bunch of schools and stuff to promote it until someone like caught on. Um,
Do you
but
think he
yeah.
like tried to go to a bunch of homeschools first and
Yeah.
realized that it was just like someone's house and he was
And
like,
you knew that you got hit by Christopher Paolini because you found a hole dug in your backyard.
yeah, he actually uses the holes as an intricate tunnel system to all the homeschools in his area. And then his publicist was like, Chris, man, I'm sorry. I know you're terrified to step foot into a high school, but we're gonna have to make it happen. And it was like his first day of school when he did the first promotion. But yeah, that was her favorite by far. I there's this thing that I like intentionally like being like late to the party with like fandom stuff because I love like hearing like spoilers or like getting information from people that have already watched it or seen it. And it's like my favorite thing ever because I love to get like my friends' takes on the situation. So Megan and I watched the first 3 episodes and I was like, what? I was like, okay, I'm not getting this. Like, why would Athena be mad? Because I had no like there are kids I feel like who probably a small circle in the Venn diagram, but I feel like there were kids that just really liked Greek mythology, but
Mm.
somehow never got into the Percy Jackson films. And I never had like an interest in Greek mythology.
I
I feel
love
like,
Greek
which
mythology.
is, and most of those kids that fell into that bucket, of course, then loved Percy Jackson. But just to clear up the rumors, I never had like an interest in Greek mythology either. It was something that like I literally remember as a kid, like one day I was like, man, this is all really interesting. And I like made like a note to myself on like a to-do list. I was like, to do, read about Greek mythology. I was like, I gotta study up on this. And I feel like kids who like have more of an exposure to like religion and different like world history stuff like had just general knowledge that is helpful. Like I feel like knowing the Greek myth or like people that have like a really good vocabulary, they're like, oh yeah, well I know what that word means because like the Greek, prefix or whatever means blah blah blah, and then I can figure out like
Oh, I
any
think
word.
that's Latin.
Or Latin, yeah. The
But I
Latin
will
like
say Greek mythology did not help me with Latin.
the like Latin prefixes and suffixes and like they can figure out anything. Anyways, there's like this thing that I really like where like people will tell me like give me like bits and pieces of a movie or a series or books or something that they've already read that then I'm like years behind on and I'm currently catching up on. And I love when they like feed me bits and pieces, like it's like a mystery that I'm like figuring out. That's what my roommate was doing because I was like, I don't understand like why Athena would be mad. And then I was like, who is Athena? Like what's her deal? Like what's Poseidon? Like I need to like Google this stuff. And then she was like, oh, well, this is this and this is why this would happen. And well, here's like how the mist is. So I just like being fed bits of information. And so then I was like, well, you know what? Like I wanted to read more. And then I don't know, this is a debate between like if you think listening to audiobooks counts as reading, But
It
I like,
is.
yeah, I think it is. And I Googled and it was like, we did multiple studies and found like no cognitive difference in like understanding between like
That's
listening
why
to an
book is in the
audiobook.
name.
Yeah, audiobook versus actually physically reading it. And I have like an Audible subscription that I literally just had to watch or to listen to like all the Harry Potter books on repeat for like the last like 7 years. And then I also had it for like, I've read like a couple of comedian autobiographies that Marriya had recommended. So I literally
You
like
do
have
so much.
you are my sole source of recommendations for
It's like you're
media.
in a basement. You're in a bomb shelter, and I'm your only source of the
Literally,
news.
like all my friends are like, I do not like discover things on my own. I have to make connections with friends. There has
You have
never
to
been
network.
I have to network and then they can tell me about new songs, new movies. I have never once like just gone out and like found a new song to listen to. My library, because I don't use
You
Spotify or anything.
you got me into what's their name? AJX? A
That was a recommendation
No.
from
Never mind, okay.
that was not even a recommendation from a friend. It's like if I also follow you on social media and you talk about a band a lot, I will check them out just because I'm like,
Oh, that's so nice.
yeah. So I'm like, okay, so I've never once discovered anything on my own. It has all been through friend recommendations. But anyways, I had this Audible account just sitting there and I had like 16 credits or something. So I was like, well, might as well go for it. And so then I downloaded one by one the Percy Jackson books, and now I'm on book 5. I've listened to literally like almost the whole series in the last like 2 weeks, and it's so freaking good.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yeah.
Because I think you have a really interesting answer that I've never heard before. Who is your godly parent?
Okay. Yeah. So Marriya asked this like when I was on book 2 or 3, I think. And I stick by this that like Hermes seems like one of the better gods. Like everyone else. I mean, Artemis seems chill, but to my understanding, she is a goddess that has decided to be a maiden forever. And I guess Athena is also a goddess that has decided to be a maiden forever, but like I guess her backstory is
She has
that
mind babies.
yeah, she has mind babies, which like Athena, I feel like we're not asking for consent when we do that because she's like, well, this is how I was born. And anytime that I see a man that just has really a juicy frontal lobe, she's like, I just show up at his door and I'm like, here's your kid that I birthed from our collective minds. And I'm not calling, Annabeth's dad is not a deadbeat dad. We find out in like the third book or like the fourth book that he's actually like totally chill. Stepmom is good. They're very nice people. But I would be a little thrown off. I'm just saying, I'd be like, hey, I had a mind meld with this person. I don't want a child to come out of it. So Athena's not very big on consent there, even though nothing physical happened. And then Artemis fully a maiden, but Artemis seems chill. She's like, I'm just on the hunt and I want other like single ladies that hate men to come on and hunt with me. So she seems chill. But then if I had to pick like one that's procreating, I said Hermes is great because like, and this is, I'll talk about this with the show. I absolutely detest the casting of Lin-Manuel Miranda because the depiction of Hermes in the books is like super chill thus far. I keep in mind I haven't finished the 5th book, but he like shows up the first time that Percy like meets him. He's like on the like shores of Long Island, which I have never conceptually thought of Long Island so much than I have in the last 3 weeks of reading the series. I don't know why, but like I don't think I ever knew what Long Island was. I thought Long Island was like part of
It was a tea. It was a
no,
nice tea.
no, I feel like I visited like Manhattan a ton, but I guess I've never visited Long Island, and I feel like I was just like grouping the two in my mind. but apparently very different geographically because they talk a lot about like open countryside and like room for like farms and like beachfront area. So, anyways, been thinking a lot about Long Island, the Long Island medium. Lots of lore to this area of land. And the first time that Percy meets Hermes, he's like on the beach and he like describes him as like looking like a New York City like businessman and like he's trying to train for like the New York City Marathon or something. And he meets Percy and he has like a bunch of different like cell phones on him because he, I guess, like in that kind of version, he's the god of like mail like transportation. He's like the message carrier of Olympus, but he's like answering a bunch of like phone calls and emails and texts on his phone and stuff. But he says to Percy, he's like, please like try to find my son Luke. And he's like, I know that like what he's done is terrible, but I still love him and I still believe that he can like be brought back from like the dark side and stuff. And I feel like no other godparent is like that. Like I feel like every other godparent is like, yeah, well, my son burnt a hamburger for an offering instead of a veggie burger, and he knows I'm vegetarian, so I actually murdered him out back in the woods. They're like, yeah, I actually sent a fucking like hellhound to just rip him to shreds, and they're like, that's okay, I got a lot of other kids. And Hermes like, I know that he takes in like all of the other unclaimed children because he's like the god of travelers, but I just think that seems really nice too. And then he like packs a bag for like Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson to go on the Sea of Monsters trip, and he packs like a perfect bag. Like if someone would pack for me and pack perfectly at all times, and it's also something that I feel like the Percy Jackson series was really missing, because before it's like, yeah, we sent these 12-year-olds out on a quest to make it from New York City to like Las Vegas and Los Angeles, and we gave them nothing, but we let them pack their own bags. And like a 12-year-old, they packed like their sword, like no change of clothes. It was like a backpack, a granola bar, and a sword. And Hermes fucking steps up to the plate. He is the dad that stepped up. And he was like, I'm packing duffel bags, not backpacks. He's like, you guys need changes of clothes, money in different currency, food supplies, ambrosia. Like he packed everything for them, and then he sent him on his merry way. But also, who's fucking staying in their lane? Hades. Hades is a real one. I know that he is evil, but he gets a bad reputation. First of all, he is sticking to his freaking oath that he's not birthing any more babies. He did bring his two kids out of the Lotus thaw that they were in to get a couple players in the game, which was wrong. But he's not birthing any babies. He's sticking to his freaking oath. He loves his wife. He has a horrible mother-in-law who can't relate to that. And I know now in the fifth book he's becoming a little bit more evil because he's like trying to kill Percy again, and he's he's like refusing to help the Olympians. But they honestly treat him like shit, and they treat Nico like shit. And like from my understanding of the lore, it's like, yeah, they like killed Daddy Kronos, and then Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades like drew straws to fucking like determine what their different realms of control would be, and Hades fucking got the underworld. And honestly, he's most concerned about like traffic control down there, which I appreciate a man that's like concerned about the logistics. He's like, you guys have just been killing so many people, and we don't have the structural flow for this. So anyways, Hades also seems pretty chill. Poseidon seems like okay, but honestly, I could call him a deadbeat dad because I feel like he is like, okay, he's showing up for like one birthday of Percy's and he seems like nice, but he seems like not involved in his kid's life. So I don't know. I'm team Hermes. Which team are you? Who's your godly parent?
I think I'm Athena because I don't think I was a successful mind meld. I think I was an impulsive thought. And that's how I'm here today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't take that question as like, who would I want to be, or like, what characteristics do I think I have?
Oh, that's
I
the whole thing.
I just took that question as like, if I could pick who seems the nicest. Okay, well, if we're reframing it in that context, which is probably the original context you meant, I don't know. Probably Athena. I feel like Annabeth is asking like all the correct questions. I don't feel like I act like rashly or anything like that. Which also like does every kid have to have dyslexia? Because Annabeth seems to like have reading on lockdown. Like she never had an issue with reading comprehension, and Percy's like 15 years old and he's like, I cannot read that stop sign over there. He's like, I'm really guessing through life. So
I
I don't
will say,
know.
I feel like Percy Jackson introduced a lot of children to like learning disabilities.
Yeah.
Um, I don't
Yeah.
know, normalized it.
I feel like ADHD is so common now, but like you said, it was like learning disabilities, and Percy as that main character and being a younger kid, 12 to start out with. I just love Percy's voice so much. And, similar to a Harry Potter, but the big difference is that Harry Potter is like third person narrative, and Harry is obviously like our main character, but we get like all of Percy's inner feelings and thoughts. So yeah, and I will say, just from the books, if you're a book lover watching this podcast, Tyson, who hasn't been introduced because he's in the second book, he's like one of my favorite characters. I love Tyson so much. He is just like this sweet little cyclops, and he's homeless, and like no one's helping him because I guess it's like lore that the cyclops are born and then they're mistakes of nature, so they must be like orphans, like they have to be orphaned growing up, because if they're orphaned, then it like, I don't know, teaches them a lesson to be like more sensible and like appreciate the stuff that they have. But Tyson is just like the sweetest freaking character. I feel like actually, if I were to be someone, I feel like I'd be freaking like Tyson. He is crying like all the time, which would be exactly my reaction to these circumstances. He's crying all the time. He loves his family so much. Like, I just was on a scene in the fifth book where Percy goes to Poseidon's castle under the ocean for the first time. And Tyson, being a cyclops, like the stuff there is that like cyclopes are used in like the forges of Hephaestus, and they can like, fire doesn't affect them at all, and they are cyclops are almost exclusively like the product of Poseidon sleeping with a lot of like nature like nymphs or something. And so he is also like Poseidon's son. And Tyson like runs up to Poseidon and he's like, Daddy, and he like gives him a hug. And I feel like all the other like half-bloods are like, oh, can't touch mom, dad, like, ooh, we can't. It's like they have a very much a relationship that is not good. But Tyson's running up and he's like, this is my daddy and this is my brother and I love them both. And he's like a really young cyclops, like he's basically a baby. But I feel like I would be a cyclops. I'm scared of my surroundings. I just love my family, and I'm like, yeah, my dad's Poseidon, but like that doesn't make him special. He's still my dad. I'm still gonna give him a hug. So shout out to Tyson. But all that being said, this is my first experience of like reading a book and then watching the adaptation within like 2 days of each other. So I think there's like, okay, now all that being aside, we've talked for like 40 minutes already, but this is more an all-encompassing podcast about Percy Jackson, and now that I'm so into the books and everything. But jumping into the actual TV series that's been recently released here, I will say that, like, I think that it's so easy when you're a book fan to, like you said, bring out the papers and Venn diagrams and write down like what's different and what's not. And I know that like it's easy to do that with any adaptation, but I also know that like we want to take the TV series as its own like medium and its own art form. And I know that Rick Riordan was like heavily involved in like the production process too, right?
Yeah.
I know that like from what you and Maggie had said over the years, he too was like extremely disappointed with the movie.
He wrote a whole letter, like a 10-page letter about why it will not work, and they didn't listen.
Yeah, so he wrote the
He
letter, your
said,
friend
and
in middle
P.S. it will
school.
work for Brooke, but she doesn't know better.
He was like, I've looked into a into a globe and I can see that someone named Brooke Rees will really like this movie, but
And that's
and
why I will never visit her town.
I will not go to the state of Pennsylvania. But in 15 years, I'll get her. I'll get her with the books. So he was writing letters, your middle school friends were writing death threats. And I think I actually follow him on Twitter. And I've seen some like posts from him over the years. And it seems like he was like actively working with the fan base, working with production companies to make this a reality. Now all that being said, I think that this is, of course, like a far more faithful version compared to the books. Like you said with the movie, sometimes they make like production decisions that are changes that I'm like, what's going on? Like, why did we have to make that change? Like, sometimes just little stuff where I'm like, okay, interesting. And I know, like, from my very like small knowledge of the film and TV world, of course, like some things aren't going to translate as well from a book to the screen, and sometimes they make these decisions for very practical reasons.
Well,
And
I
if
think, especially with the movie, the like getting each pearl is more of a typical hero. I mean, it's stupid because the hero's journey is mostly like based on Greek mythology and like the Odyssey or whatever. But I think it's more like the 3-act structure of like you have
yeah.
to do this to get the next pearl kind of thing. And it works better for movies for that like rising action climax, we're in the journey now or whatever, than like the quest format where like nothing is really accomplished
Hmm.
chapter to chapter, but that's like the point of a quest. And I think that's why people are like, I think it's hard with the TV show because we have people who are like coming from the movie that was like more action based, that
Hmm.
are like, this is stupid, we're not really like getting anywhere, like the pacing is really weird. But I think the pacing in the show is much more like accurate to the quest feel of the books, where it's like it's not about the destination, it's about the
It's about the
journey.
journey, which it is. The journey is the quest. And I like the casting choices that they made. I feel like
Mhm.
the younger cast, with I don't know the Percy's actor's name, but I guess he's been in a couple like the Adam Project or something with
Yeah,
Ryan
I
Reynolds
feel
and
like he like a lot plays the younger Ryan Reynolds.
yeah, and is like a comedic actor
Hmm.
primarily. And I really like him. I think he's doing a really great job. And
Yeah, I think like
and
kids were saying that like it's because my students and I are all watching it together. Um, so thank you for Percy Jackson for saving me some class prep. Um, thank you. And but like they're talking about how, seeing them younger, it like just kind of pulls in how like fucking messed up it is that these children
yeah.
are in charge of like saving the world in a way that I don't think those same stakes applied to like the movie, where it's like they have a truck and they're just gonna like, it's just basically they're running an errand, and if they die, they've lived a life. While in like the book and the TV show, I think is more like these are like kind of children that are sent out for to be sacrificed, and especially
Hmm.
comparing that with like the like Perseus of Greek mythology, who like maybe had a shot before he went on a journey. But I think it's much more kind of dire and scary as children.
Yeah, and I think that like something that I think the series is doing a better job at showing is like these complicated parental relationships that they
Mm.
have. And I haven't seen the movie in a while, but it was something that was a different thing than the book. I can't quite remember how the book is, but when they're at the arch, in what is it, St. Louis,
Hmm.
they're at the arch and it's like that's Athena's temple, like modern day temple. And Annabeth says that Athena had to let the like chimera and the mother of all monsters, I can't remember, Echidna or something,
Mm-hmm.
had to like purposefully let her in, and that she's being punished. That's different than how it is in the books, but I think it does do a better job of letting audiences who haven't seen or haven't read the books in on the fact that these gods are like vindictive even against
Yeah.
their own children. And that's when I started like asking my roommate, like, why on earth would she do that? And she was like, well, like the whole things with the gods is that they're like very proud people. Like all of them have
Mm.
like huge egos. And I think that it did like a better job of showing that.
Yeah.
Like you
I think
said,
the
like,
show is playing a lot with like also the idea that like not all monsters are monsters,
yeah,
which is somewhat in the book, but I think it's much more in this series. Like I know that Uncle Rick had said that he wanted a better story for Medusa in the
yes.
TV series. And so I think what's like kind of the thing is that Percy Jackson fans wanted like a very faithful rendition of the books to TV series, but I think we're also getting like kind of a 2024 like upgrade a little bit to
Mhm.
it of like looking at different themes that are also like kind of more grown up. And so maybe that's
Mhm.
because so many of the Percy Jackson fans are now adults and can kind of tackle like what is right, what is wrong, does everything scary have to be scary in a way that it was a little bit more simplistic in the book. I think also, there's a lot of people who hate the series, and I
Mhm.
think we just like collectively have a lot of trauma from the movie. Um, and so it's like a lot of people will never necessarily be satisfied with
Mhm.
anything that they put out, which is also valid. And at least, they have the musical, but I feel like it's hard to prove everyone who I think we let our hopes up for the movie.
Mhm.
And so a lot of people expected not much from the show going into it. And then having those negative expectations is not always the best for like receiving the show. I mean, I don't think the show is bad. I know that there are definite changes. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
there are changes for probably for a reason that I don't always understand, but maybe better for a 2024 audience.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm landing. And like I said, like I've never been in this situation before where I'm reading the like source material and immediately trying to see what their interpretation is in a TV series. I think where I land is that like I'm obviously okay with changes since nothing will ever be like a faithful adaptation. It's just not possible in making a TV series. But I want to see changes that have like purpose or that add to the story. And especially when I know that like Rick Riordan was so heavily involved in it, I'm also trying to think like, okay, well, like maybe I know that he was heavily involved. I don't think he like wrote the screenplay or anything. I don't think he was involved in that level, but I know that he like very much, like we said, like was working with Disney to make this series happen and was like an integral player. But um I like to think that also, like you said, like he wanted Medusa to have a better story, that I think some people who are fans have a hard time thinking about authors wanting to make changes to their original books. I
Mhm.
mean, he wrote that book like almost 20 years ago. And if you
Yeah.
had the opportunity to improve upon it, maybe he's directly making some of these suggestions for what we see. And I wanted to jump into I've had a couple I have one favorite episode so far and one least favorite episode. So my favorite episode was the Medusa episode, and I just loved that depiction of Medusa. And it hints at it in the books. It's like similar, but I feel like she was honestly like extremely like a sympathetic character in the TV series portrayal. And something that they did different was that they had Electo, one of the Mrs. Dodd's character, the algebra teacher, who's actually like a hell demon, kind of traps them in Medusa's garden gnome emporium. And I
Mhm.
thought that was a good change too, because it really like kind of made the stakes a little bit higher for like them having to choose Medusa or choose this other evil character, and talking about how like not all monsters are evil. Like Percy has like a really good monologue about like who Medusa is and who like his namesake like Perseus is, and that like some of these characters like aren't as evil as we initially think. They do then promptly chop her head off, but
It happens,
they
yeah.
kind of forced their hand there. But yeah, I loved that episode. It was also like I felt like when I was watching the movie, it was another iconic moment with like the early 2000s using the back of like the iPod touch screen to see Medusa's reflection. I thought that was hilarious, and one of the changes that I actually like thoroughly find very comedic about the movie, comparing it to what actually happens with like Grover putting on the Hermes like flighted shoes and like tricking them with Annabeth's like invisibility cap. But that has been my favorite episode so far. And then my least favorite, which I'm like actually kind of scared, like I said at the top, we're recording this episode before all of before all of the episodes have been released in this first series. But my least favorite has been the most recent release, which is the like We Take a Zebra to Las Vegas, which is the Lotus Hotel one. And I feel like they're going off script in a way that has not been productive to the to the entertainment factor of the TV series. We're going off script in a way that I feel like completely goes against like Percy's character. And I've seen a lot of people on Twitter and on TikTok complain about this episode being like the pinnacle of what they haven't liked about the rest of the series, which is that they feel like the screenwriters are doing a lot of like telling and not showing. They feel like there's a lot of like unnecessary exposition, and the characters like going back and forth talking with each other about what they're going to do or what needs to be done without actually like showing them doing that or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my biggest issue, and what again other people have talked about online, is that the Lotus Hotel in the book, one, they're kind of like trapped, like forced into there, and they don't like really know like what it is. And when they get in there, it's supposed to be this like fun like environment, that the environment itself is what is like keeping them there. And there's this like crazy moment of realization when Percy has, they get like a hotel room, they talk about like taking a nap or resting up, and they're like, no, like it's so cool downstairs, like let's go play a few games and like take a look. And they're like, okay. And I feel like that like really is important to hint at the fact that they are kids. They're 12
Yeah.
years old. Like Percy's inner
Well, Percy like
dialogue.
kind of started saying that. He was like, "Is it okay if we like play around?" And then he was like, "I'm kidding." And it's like, "No, Percy."
Yeah. Yeah,
That was what you're supposed to do.
which I like, they're very mature kids for their age, but like Percy's inner dialogue is like so innocent. It's so
Mm-hmm.
sarcastic, so funny, as like any 12-year-old little kid would be. And Grover is supposed to be like, as a satyr, he's actually closer to like age 25, but he's still like kind of a baby satyr, and he's young too. And I feel like my only issue is that these characters seem like a little too serious for the age.
Yeah.
Like we got the age appropriate actors. I feel like we're having a lot better like emotional moments, and a lot more like like we said, like kind of more metaphorical, higher thinking, being punished by their parents, not all monsters are evil, all these just like things. But I feel like the casino moment was just such an opportunity to show their like inner child, like, and it would have been so easy too. Like they had the whole casino setup, it would have been so easy to do the fun setup, and they get like unlimited charge cards in the books, and they have like this fun playful moment. And then like the big reveal is that he like talks to a kid, and the kid is saying like phrases from like the 70s. He's like, "Oh, cool, man." And Percy is like, "Oh, that sucks." And he's like, "Sucks? Like, what do you mean? Like, that's not a phrase we use here in the 70s." And it's
Yeah.
this like big moment.
I feel like they've had to draw back a lot for these 30-minute episodes, which I don't know why they
Mhm.
picked like 30-minute episodes, but I feel like what they're pulling back on is like the humor.
Yeah.
Which is a little frustrating, which I so I know that it goes off like the rails a little bit. But I really like the Aries episode because of
Mm-hmm.
that part where they're like talking to Aries and they're like, no, we don't want anything, and like their heads keep on popping up and down. That's the first time that I
Yeah.
felt like it was like very similar in tone. And I think that they've just kind of made it very, very serious and kind of taken away some of like the banter or some of like the funny bits. And I think that's sometimes the issue of like adapting something that is so heavily first person,
Mm-hmm.
funny narrator kind of thing. And I think something similar happened with like Harry Potter. Um, where like Harry is so sassy
He's
and
so
so funny, and then
sassy.
he just like became like, I don't know, it just seemed like he was like blasting like Evanescence and and
Yeah.
Paramore at the Dursleys like that entire 7 years in the movies. And I feel like similarly here it's kind of we've had to, because we can't have that like monologue necessarily
Mm-hmm.
of Percy, we've had to kind of cut back on the funny bits, but I think some of that could have been in like dialogue or, you know, situations or physical comedy. I think another place that we see that is like Hunger Games, which is so very prominently Katniss's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is like Katniss isn't like super like
She's not
Katniss isn't a
funny.
comedian.
No,
Like she's
Katniss is
and
not charismatic and
and
like
so it doesn't super
perfect.
take away from it when it's we lose that point of view. But I think
Hmm.
things like Percy Jackson, um, since it is so like this is one step into the next mission, this is another step. It's really like the voice that ties it all together, and I think that is like something that we're missing. And yeah, I
Hmm.
don't know why did they choose like 30-minute episodes? Like it's much more easy for like me to go through, but like they could have added a little bit more, and they're even kind of like I know that the last episode was like two chapters all together
Hmm.
in 30 minutes, which is like a lot to squeeze in together. Um so I'm not sure. I think we need like everyone's doing hour-long episodes. I don't know why they're like we
You're
need to
like
cut it here,
Disney Plus, please greenlight the longer episodes. But
right?
yeah, I'm just so confused. I think like why is Hermes there? And then back to the depiction of or not the depiction, back to the casting of Lin-Manuel Miranda. He just screams. Like I'm sorry, I just can't get past him being like
He's a sex
Hamilton
god.
past him being like Hamilton theater nerd, which is what Mari and I were talking about. And I just don't find him to be very like charismatic in that role of Hermes or sympathetic. Like Lin-Manuel is giving off like confident, arrogant kind of vibes and not so much. And also they're revealing stuff about Luke's backstory that I haven't even found out until book 5, the end,
Hmm.
that there's
Hmm.
number one, like seers have the potential, seers are like mortal people who can see through the mist, that they have the potential to like see too much and potentially go crazy. And now they're hinting at the fact that that's what happened with Luke's mom. I literally, like, it was a spoiler for me. I read that last night, or I watched it last night with the series, and then I read that in book 5 like a couple hours ago, and I was like, what the fuck? So they're bringing in some kind of extra stuff to
Yeah.
explain Luke's actions, which we don't know yet in the series that it's Luke that's behind all this. And then we get to the very end, and I was so confused. They're like, he goes to see the like water nymph in the at like Santa Monica Pier, and she's like, it's past the summer solstice. She was like, the deadline passed, it's 3 days past the summer solstice. And Percy's like, I'm gonna continue on anyway. And she was like, well, here are 4, pearls for you. It's past like the I don't understand why they would make it past the summer solstice. Like that was such a big deal in the books that we're making it to this deadline. And the
Hmm.
fact that they just like threw that away, they didn't have to say that. Like I don't feel like it contributes at all to
Yeah.
Percy's
I guess they
character.
wanted it more like the stakes even higher, that they waste all
That
this
they're
time. But yeah,
warring now.
I think there's also like something to be said, especially with like the releasing of Luke's backstory. And I think you were mentioning this too when you first started watching the show and kind of comparing to the movie, is that like I think we're also in a period where like the anti-hero is much more humanized. And so I feel like including some little bits about like Luke was justified in fucking
Yeah.
up the world. There's some kind of like humanizing, especially like also with Gabe, who doesn't seem as bad in the
Yeah.
show versus the actual book. Like I feel like we've kind of censored a little bit instead of like going to extremes in the show. And then maybe that's to satisfy like Gabe's still a person, but Gabe's a shit person, and I still hope that he is turned into stone and what sold to like a
I
gambling thing. Yeah, something. I
no,
can't remember what his he's sold
so
somewhere.
she turns him into stone and then says that she has become like a sculptor and like
Oh
sells it at
yeah,
like an art
yeah,
auction. But yeah, and then they provide 4 pearls, which I
yeah.
feel
Mm-hmm.
like is hinting at the fact that in the next episode, they're gonna have all 4 of them. So Annabeth, Grover, Percy, and his mom get out of the underworld, which I thought it was like an extreme. And this was, my biggest moment when I was reading the books that I was like, oh shit, that's so different from the movie that I originally saw. Is that like I feel like it is a super important character trait of Percy that he knew that he had to leave his mom behind in order
Mm-hmm.
to save the world, and he kind of like had to put his faith in the gods that like returning Hades, what is it, it's like his invisibility thing too,
Mm-hmm.
that
Everybody
Hades would,
fucking has invisibility.
they
Anybody
all
could
got
be anywhere.
invisibility.
Yeah, I mean,
um
from the preview, what I'm what I don't know, maybe this is crazy. And I don't know why exactly they're doing. They seem to be making the gods a bigger deal than they actually were in the books. But it seems like because Ares shows up with a sword that he's gonna like battle him for like a pearl or something. So maybe they'll still have like
hmm
the 3 or something at the end. But I don't know. They're making choices. Um,
Yeah, which it like I said, it's fine if they contribute to like the overall story or they add something else to it, which like they added in Hephaestus's first of all, they added Hephaestus because we don't see him at the water park, but they added him in, which I thought was interesting, and they kind of gave more backstory to who Hephaestus was. And then instead of it being like just like the love boat and then the spiders that come out, it's this like contraption where Percy has to sit in there, and I was like, okay, like that's a fine, difference there. Like instead of the spiders, I think it's, building Percy's character up more, building Annabeth and Percy's relationship more. So I'm like, cool, that's a cool, fun addition or switch up.
mhm.
But with the pearls, and I'm just like a little bit concerned about where we're going now.
Yeah.
And I think like you said, like the anti-hero and kind of giving Luke more backstory here. Um, it's like an interesting choice because I kind of like the buildup of in
They're
the
gonna say
books.
Clarice. So she had a whole like traumatic bullying incident when she was 8. We're gonna humanize her as well.
Yeah. I mean, like, I kind of like that Luke is this like character who we don't see humanized at all in the books, except for through Annabeth's point of view.
Hmm.
And we kind of like question Annabeth like heavily
Yeah.
for that point of view. And so now that I'm in book 5 and I'm getting a little bit more to Luke's backstory, I kind of like that it was held all the way until the last moment. Cause like I said, I haven't finished yet, but I'm assuming there's going to be some ultimate showdown. But yeah, going back to the pearls, it's like Percy's like Achilles heel or like his fault, that the gods told him, is that like, he like values his friendships and his like loyalty like to a fault, and
Hmm.
Annabeth is like her pride and stuff. So I don't know, I think it's really important that he did like leave his mother in the underworld, because that was like a moment for him to kind of get past that fatal flaw of his and
Hmm.
to do what was best for saving the world. But yeah, overall thoughts, I really like the books so much. And TV
I think the
show,
show is definitely better.
yeah.
And I think the show, at least at least Rick is making some money off of you, has maybe brought some people back into the book. So at least it's free publicity, which you can really only hope for with an adaptation when you're a writer. And I think it has illuminated some childhood joy
Hmm
that I haven't felt ever. So
Yeah, for sure. I think like my overall rating would be like 3.5 out of 5 stars. Again, depending on the last couple episodes that get released here. But
Mhm.
I really like the casting decisions. I just wish it was like a little bit more lighthearted, not necessarily action based, but a little less exposition based. And
Yeah.
I saw a TikTok with actually someone that went to William and Mary. It was like the first time I've ever been scrolling on my For You page and like someone that I didn't know but like knew of in college. She was a couple grades below us, I think. And she was talking about how, you know, like we've said, the issues with having a first person book translated into a TV series is we don't get that inner dialogue. We don't get a sense of Percy's like sarcastic behavior or like just innocence unless it's in a conversation with Annabeth or Grover, and ways that that could have been avoided. She was like, oh, like what if they had Percy like writing like letters back to his mom or something,
Mm.
even though, you know, she's passed, but he still believes that she's there. So letters to like someone that's outside of it, letters to Chiron, like Iris, like diaries or like something like that. And someone else was talking about like the Martian movie with Matt Damon, which I guess the book is also written in like a first person perspective. And the way that they solve that is through the video diary entries that he's basically just talking to himself in. So I think
Percy goes live
yeah,
on
first it goes
TikTok.
on in TikTok live. He's like, "Oh, thank you for the, thank you for the galaxy. Thank you for blah blah blah." But yeah, I think that hopefully, you know, they get a second season because I feel like it's like way more faithful. Got a lot of people into the Percy Jackson universe, getting new fans for reading the book series. So if they do end up doing a second season, I hope that maybe they like can take some of those you know, critiques into consideration and maybe
We're
just
happy to work for.
we'll work with them.
We're in the writers' room if you would like.
And I feel like it honestly would be like kind of a simple fix if they can just figure out some other way to do a little less, you know, dialogue heavy between the three characters and just a little bit more on the fun, silly side of Percy. But okay, all that being said, I don't know. I had kind of a hard time coming up with remakes, and now that I've read the books, everything is kind of like globbing together in terms of what was in the book, what was in the series. But so instead of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, I think it should be Percy Jackson and the Apple Lightning Cable Thief. So it's, you know, the lightning chargers is what they call them when you get it in the actual like Apple pack, and they're always like the superior chargers by far because they charge your like iPhone within like 15 minutes compared to like any other charger that you can get from like Walmart or Amazon. So I like to think that Zeus has like an iPhone and he's just up there on Mount Olympus. Like the service is like excellent, like it's right near Verizon Tower. He has 5G, and like he comes back to his like apartment after the winter solstice and goes to plug in and charge his iPhone. It's obviously been drained because he was like doing a lot of selfies. And you know, he goes to his nightstand and boom, the lightning charger is no longer there. And you know, everyone's telling him like you don't have to start a war over this, like you can go to Apple. And he's like, you don't know how expensive those chargers are. And he was like, I want mine back. And then it's a whole journey to like the New York City Apple store, trying to get a replacement. And the underworld is actually like the Geek Squad table where they're trying to convince Zeus that he could just get a different charger cord. And then another one is that they're in the so they're in the Lotus Hotel and Casino. And since this is my episode where I have like the biggest like issues with, I think they're in the casino, you know, they walk in and it's a little bit more faithful to the books. They're there, they're like at the arcade games, at the machines, having a good time, when all of a sudden George Clooney comes walking in, and it is actually an Ocean's 11 Percy Jackson crossover.
But they've been
So
there for a while.
the entire cast of Ocean's 11 has been there for a while. approximately in the 90s. And Julia Roberts comes walking down the staircase, and Percy, Annabeth, and Grover quickly find out that they are in the middle of a casino heist. So
But they've
it's
been they've been trying to rob this casino for quite a while.
yeah, but I like to think that George Clooney, like, once he sees Percy, that's who he talks to to
Mhm.
figure out that, it's no longer the 90s. But I like to think that Percy kind of like wakes him and the crew of Ocean's 11 like out of this lotus coma that they're in. And they get the money, they get out, they like stick it to the big casino guy. He gets the girl, he gets Julia Roberts. But then because of inflation, um, the amount that they have stolen from the casino is like barely enough to cover the cost of college tuition from the 90s to the 2020s. So yeah, Ocean's 11 crossover in the Lotus Casino. And then in the Hephaestus water park episode, they break into this water park after hours, but instead of like the golden chair like attacking them, or in the books where it's like the automaton spiders, I think that it's just like a bunch of like Disney adults that are that are Disney bounding for the day. And they come up to them and they're trying to get Ares, what is it, his shield or something? They're trying to get Ares' shield, and the Disney bounders, Disney adults come up to them and they're like taking just like relentless selfies, or they're trying to get through the ride, but the Disney adults are vlogging about like the different foods that they've eaten that day. And they're trying to get the shield, but they're blocked by just a couple big like Mickey ears that
When
they're
they drink from the water, they're actually doing a video on what park has better water. You can drink from the rides, and then they get the ride shut down.
yeah, they get
That
the
was a
ride shut
big that
down.
was a big Disney Universal thing a while ago.
That's horrendous. Did they all get like multiple diseases after
I think he
filming
was he
that?
was a, he was like a Disney college program person, and then he was fired.
Mm, okay. Um, but yeah. And then I just will note that I tweeted about this the other day. I love Percy's like just unrelenting innocence when it comes to the fact that every single time he goes to camp, like, he's not even spending the first night there. Like, I think that this is not so much a remake, just like an observation, because kind of like how Harry Potter, he faces like some bumps in the roads, but like old Voldemort is letting him get through the school year. And then it's
He cares
always
about his
he
education.
cares about his education. And Voldemort's like, listen, you study, you let Hermione give you the homework journal, you do your work, you put in the
You
hours, you
make
get your
honor roll.
education, you get on a roll, and then I will attack you last semester. So it's always Harry's summer semester, like without fail, that's when he's gonna get fucked up. And so like that's like J.K. Rowling's formula for the Harry Potter books. And then Rick Riordan's formula for Percy is that he goes to a school that he attends. He barely gets an education because it doesn't seem like Percy's studying that much. And then he blows up the school inevitably because he's being attacked by monsters. So Percy's rep with schools across New York City absolutely destroyed. He has been to every school you could possibly think of. And then the other formula that I like is that Percy then turns up to camp, and without fail, he is going on a quest, whether
Mhm.
he likes it or not, within like 12 hours of being at camp. And what I like is that he even is so innocent to like unpack like his bunk bed. Like, he gets into the Poseidon cabin. He's like home for the summer. And he's like, I'm back, baby. And he's like making up his bed and putting his like shit on the walls, hanging up posters. And I'm like, Percy, babe, like, you know that you're about to die in like T minus 15 minutes. Like, if I were Percy, I'm just saying, by like book number 3, I'd be coming up. I'd be like I'd be like, hey, yep, I got a s'more. I'll make an offering. I'm going straight to the Oracle. I know what to do. I'm not even, hey, Dionysus. Yep, I'm going to get my quest. Don't even worry, babe. I got it. I'll see you guys in approximately 3 weeks. Like I'll be here for the rest of the summer, but I'm not going to be here for these first 3 weeks. And I also like to think that there's like a camp game that Percy has just missed every single year. Like he finally, like, let's say that he survives book 5 and he's like 16 years old, go into camp for the summer after everything is fine or something, and he makes it the first 2 weeks of camp, and they play like musical chairs or something, and he's like, what the fuck? He's like, I never made it to the musical chairs section. And they're like, we do this like the first Saturday of every camp, and he's like, well, I haven't seen a Saturday yet, have I? So yeah, I like to think that there's like, or like braiding lanyards or something. Like he has missed out for sure on some summer camp activities. There's probably like a song that they all know that they all sit around the fire and are singing this camp song, and Percy's just like wistfully looking at them, like all cheering around. There's like a coordinated dance, and he has missed out on it every single summer because he's like fucking being murdered, like, of course. But okay, well, what are your remakes?
Well, maybe he does have a normal summer once and he's, doing a bunch of things. Um, they have fencing. They try to offer him like strawberry. He's like, I'm allergic to strawberries. And then he finds out that he actually has a brother, a la Parent Trap, which is
Mm-hmm.
Tyson. And then at the end of the summer, they decide to switch places. And it's honestly not super successful.
So Percy is like in Hephaestus's forges under the sea, and he just is absolutely going up in flames.
Yes.
Like he has like burn marks all over. Do you think he like wears just like a flesh colored eye patch over one
I think
eye?
they don't try. They don't
They
try
don't
to
even
cover it up.
try.
And Sally's like, something's different.
No, see, oh, what I loved TV series from film adaptation is that in the film, Sally was kind of like a fucking shit mom. Like
Mhm.
she was okay, but like she was in it like very briefly. And in the books and in the series, even though she's only been in, the first episode, she is a great mom. Like she is absolutely fabulous. And she is like Percy's saving grace, because a lot of these other half-bloods had like shit parents on both sides. So at least Sally is like a great mom. But
Hmm.
so she would know. She would spot
She
Tyson
would
from a
know,
mile
but
off.
yeah.
But she
But
would
she's
go with it
busy
too.
designing wedding dresses and being British in this version.
Yeah, she puts a hat on one of the wedding dresses and a
Hmm.
veil over it, and Tyson's like, "That's beautiful, mom."
Yep, and she just plays along because maybe he needs this.
She
Um,
would. She's really cool. She would play
mhm.
along. She'd be like, "Hey, honey, here's
She
your
would
blue
share her
food."
Olivia Rodrigo, which I thought was an interesting choice to have her listen to in the first episode.
Yeah, out in the rain. Like
Yeah.
she was having like a early 2000s like Kelly Clarkson moment.
Hmm.
uh,
Well, when you can't get to a hot topic, you have to adapt somehow.
gotta
Um,
improvise.
the other thing is that in a similar franchise, Harry Potter, I really liked that Harry Potter, the fans made like a spin-off, which we do have the Percy Jackson musical, and I think that would be fun to have like a taped version. But Harry Potter has the Puffs where they focus on the Hufflepuffs, which are
Mhm.
like not a real part of the original Harry Potter series because they don't really do anything. And so it's just like the Hufflepuff journey as Harry Potter is fucking up the school year. And I think that would be fun to do like someone from like, I don't know, like the Demeter house or something. Um, what their summer is like, and that all of the news is just all surrounding Percy Jackson and getting Iris messages, and they're just trying to like win capture the flag once. And they're just growing flowers and trying their best. So that's one. And then I don't know, like, because obviously I don't teach like younger children, but I think what we've brought down is like, I know even when I was in school, it was like we're still using the same exact like Schoolhouse Rock teaching educational video materials or like Bill Nye, which are so outdated. So I think it would be fun if like for teaching like world history or something, we have Percy Jackson and his mom teaching about Greek mythology. To on and it only releases on VHS, so you have to roll one of those little televisions into the classroom to watch. But I think just some kind of updated teaching material to help them with their Latin, um, and all of that good stuff. I think that would be a fun teaching material, um, because kids are already going to get into Greek mythology, so why not give them a little bit of help?
Yeah. I like it. All right. Well, is there any who's your daddy stats for this?
No, ma'am, not yet.
Okay. Um, all right. Let's get into what we've been watching. I have been trying to use Letterboxd more in the year 2024. So I watched Insidious Chapter 3, which was not good at all. Absolutely horrible. I loved Insidious 1 and 2 and have been waiting for Insidious 5, which is Insidious the Red Door, to release to streaming, which I think it was a month or so ago. But I hadn't seen the third or fourth ones yet, and they're both like prequels. So you don't necessarily have to see them, but with those horror movie franchises, like, sometimes they leave little nuggets of information that are going to be helpful for the next movie. So my roommate and I watched that. It was just bad, just bad, bad, bad. Just like absolutely bare minimum effort on the plot line. The like main character was kind of turned into the medium instead of like the person that's being haunted. And it was just so cheesy in like not a good way. So bad. Then we were on like a bit of a horror movie kick again. So we watched The Hole in the Ground, a 2019 horror movie, and it was okay. It was like an interesting premise. I don't know if I liked the execution that much, but the premise is really good. It's that this woman is like recently divorced and she has a young son, and they move into a house. It's in like Ireland, I'm pretty sure, or she like has an Irish accent, but I'm pretty sure they're in Ireland, and or like maybe England, but they're in this new house and it's on like the edge of like kind of a forest wooded area, and they go out to like take a look at the backyard and everything, and like a little bit ways into the woods there's this like huge hole, like so big it looks like it was like made for like construction purposes. And they look at it and she's like, okay, like make sure you're not going outside without like mommy being here with you. The kids maybe like 6 or 7. And there's this older woman in the neighborhood, and she has completely lost her mind. Like everyone in town talks about her, and this older woman has like a super tragic story where she basically had like a schizophrenic episode where she couldn't recognize her own son anymore and tried to like attack him, and the dad unfortunately like ended up like running over this child, and then the mother went into like a complete psychotic break. And so she's like this old woman rocking around, and then they're in like the car driving home after school pickup, and the old woman is there, and she looks at the mom and she was like, that's not your son. And she's like, what do you mean? And so then the whole premise is that this mom is noticing these like extremely subtle like differences in her kid that like only a mom would notice. And the movie actually does a pretty good job of like not knowing which side is correct. You don't know if this new mom is actually crazy, if there's like some sort of curse that's happening to her where she is, being haunted to then attack her own child, or if there is actually something wrong with the kid. And so she's noticing that like he doesn't like cheese quesadillas anymore or something, or he's like
Whoa.
he's like eating all of his food when before he was a super picky eater, and he's like not playing with his like favorite like action figure like he used to. So she like goes and takes a walk out in the woods, and she like finds like his favorite action figure like just laying in the dirt somewhere. And then eventually she like goes to the hole, and she's like now fully convinced that this kid is not her child, that he's somehow been replaced by like a complete lookalike. And the kid has like extraordinary like abilities of like strength and stuff, and he like slams a table up against her. And so she like finds a way to lock the kid in the basement, and then she runs to the hole because for some reason she like knows that that's like the source of all this evil, and she gets like sucked up into the hole and goes to this like place where there are all these bones there, and she finds her kid like in the dirt. He's covered in dirt. He has like all these like roots around him. And then there are all these like flesh only bodies, like bodies as if they have like no faces, no mouths or anything. They're just kind of like empty molds of bodies. And they like one of them like touches her leg and then turns into her. So it's kind of these like mimic kind of creatures where they're able to adapt your like shape and they have like evil purposes or something. But she gets her kid and she gets out, but then like the ending scene is like you're still not like entirely sure if that's actually her kid or if that's actually the mom. So I really liked the premise. Like it sounds like really interesting when you just describe it like that, but the movie itself like wasn't amazing in the way that it showed that. So I think I gave it like a 3.5 stars. Keeping on the Ireland theme, I've been watching Derry Girls, which is so good. Like I know nothing about like Irish culture. I feel like the US, like, I don't know, maybe it was just my public school education, but when we talked about world history, there was absolutely no fucking mention of like Ireland's like bid for independence or like the
Did you
IRA
get the
or
potato famine?
no. We got
What?
like well, I maybe they like mentioned no, I feel like there was absolutely like no discussion.
Well, I feel like we
Um
always got potato famine because we had like an introduction into satire, which has that satire about eating children or something, which is about, I think, the potato famine. But anyway, continue.
oh, I
Like
don't know
Jonathan
about
Swift.
like, wait, quite literally the only wait, this is about to be so fucking funny. So, literally the only thing that I remember from public school education, world history about Ireland was like Irish people coming to America, like early Irish like immigrants. And you know how they taught us about that? We watched the Nicole Kidman like Tom Cruise like Irish immigration movie. That
Hmm.
that was the only thing that we read about. So anyways, I know that like Derry Girls is like critically acclaimed. People just like love it. They love the ensemble, and I guess it's like really popular in Ireland, and they all say that it's like pretty like true to form for what like living in Ireland in like what is it like 90s is? I think it's like early 90s. But great cast there. Absolutely love it. They're like short, easy episodes. Then I saw Paul Blart Mall Cop, which I don't think I had actually ever seen.
Hmm.
I feel like I had like made jokes about it before, and like I feel like it's something where I saw a lot of like trailers for it on like ABC Family. I would see like snippets of it, but I don't think I ever actually watched the movie because I watched it for the first time. And it is what it is. It's nothing nothing that's gonna get an Oscar, but I thought it was funny enough. Then I saw Skyscraper, which is a 2018 film with Dwayne The Rock Johnson, which it's like always funny. I feel like I've seen every rock movie that there is, but then I find like some hidden gems sometimes. And I understand why this one was not marketed
Yeah.
as much as other ones because oh, it was interesting. And it's about like he is this former like FBI or army guy that had like an operation gone wrong where the guy that they were chasing like ended up blowing up his whole family, not
Oh, I
the
thought you
Rock's
meant like
family.
surgery.
No, but then he has like all these burns and he's like now an amputee. And something that's very wrong for patient doctor like ethics is that he like falls in love with his surgeon and
Hmm.
then ends up like marrying her and having a couple kids. So it's like 10 years later and they're in like China, I think. And there's this guy that's building this huge like skyscraper as the title hints at. And it's like he has this technology that's like never been seen before and it's like the tallest building and he really wants to open up the other halves of the floor. So Dwayne Johnson is like somehow like a security expert in that and it's his like old army buddy friend, but then you quickly realize that it's actually like a larger plot from this like Russian guy that is like intimidating people into giving him money, and like the Chinese like skyscraper designer like didn't give in. So the Russian guy like like lights the entire building on fire and traps him, the builder, in like the penthouse suite. And it's the entire story is like the Rock trying to get into this burning skyscraper to get his family out. And what was really unique about my viewing experience, and after researching many other people have found issues with, is that the online version of this movie does not have subtitles for the Chinese only speaking parts.
Oh.
So there's like 5 to 10 scenes where it's just like Chinese like military operatives talking to each other that has absolutely no English subtitles. So I missed out on quite a bit. This could have been a much better movie. But literally I was just like, okay, well, we're just gonna have to imagine what was said here. So yeah, that was an interesting viewing. And then another like newer release that I saw is Jake Johnson's, I think, directorial debut, Self-Reliance. And it's marketed as like an unconventional, like rom-com kind of feel, action comedy. And I think it's absolutely wrong to market it as that, because I was not getting comedy vibes at all. Like, I guess maybe like irreverent dark comedy, but it was so bad in the first half of it. And then once I kind of like got a sense of where it was going and what the film was actually about, I was like, "Oh, okay, that's like it's better." But I needed to be like prepared that it was attempting to be a very like filmy, artsy film where like this is more of a metaphor for like mental illness and loneliness than like an actual game. And the premise is that Jake Johnson's character is like this lonely kind of guy who was in a long-term relationship and was broken up with, and he doesn't know why. And his like former girlfriend now has like a new life and a new baby and everything. And he just like is kind of like wasting his life away, like he's not moving on. And he is like walking down the street one day when Andy Samberg is in a limo and tells him to like get in, and he is offered like $1 million if he'll play in like a dark web celebrity like pay to have people be hunted. And for $1 million, but like the loophole is that, you know, they won't be able to kill you if you're with someone because they don't want to hurt innocent people, only people that have signed up for this. And so he says, "Oh, okay, so as long as I'm with someone, like, then you can't hurt me." And they're like, "Yeah." And so he's like, "Okay." And so then he goes on a mission to like have his family members be around him, but none of them believe him and think that he's going through a psychotic break. And so he like hires a homeless man to like be with him 24/7, and that works out. Oh, it's like over the course of 30 days. He has 30 days to make it, and then he
Mm.
gets $1 million. And then he puts like an ad on Craigslist, and Anna Kendrick says that she's also been like tasked with playing this game, and she will like meet up with him and they can like have like an alliance and partner with each other. So you're like, "Okay, okay." And then Anna Kendrick gets involved and you're like, "Okay, there's the like rom-com aspect. They're like falling in love with each other." But then it just gets sad, and then it delves into like the actual premise, which is like, you know, it never fully says, it's supposed to be kind of ambiguous, but you're like, "Oh, this is much more like Jake Johnson, the main character, has like a mental kind of illness, and this is like all in his head, and it is like a manifestation of his loneliness and kind of like a cry for help." And
Mm.
Anna Kendrick was like the only person that was kind of willing to like play along with this, as well as like the homeless man, which is kind of funny because I know that like, you know, homelessness is pretty like stigmatized in the US, and the way that we view it is very much like an individualistic like failure of someone, rather than like systemic support not being there. But I thought it was interesting that like the homeless man was one of the only people that believed him and that like supported him, because I feel like homeless people often are struggling with mental illness or addiction or anything like that. And that's like one of the reasons that this homeless man is able to like sympathize with him. Like he maybe has this experience of loneliness of having to find a community outside of like your family members. So yeah, it ended up being like I gave it like 3 out of 5 stars. I just wish I had kind of known more of the vibes when going into it. I feel like anytime I'm kind of like blindsided by what I thought was going to be like an easy rom-com kind of style watch, and then it turns into like more of like an artistic kind of metaphorical movie. It always takes me like a moment to adjust. So I feel like if I went into it kind of knowing that there were going to be these much deeper like subtext, I would have like approached it differently. So yeah, but I would like give it a watch now that like you kind of know the background and see how it is. And then the last thing I watched was the first Hobbit movie, Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, which like when it first came out, I was a diehard Lord of the Rings fan, and I was so deeply disappointed with Peter Jackson's latest rendition because of the like he basically was favoring like innovative camera techniques and like 3D filming over things actually like looking good. And when he did that, he like had to go way more towards CGI than the practical effects that he had used in Lord of the Rings. So for someone who would like watch the Lord of the Rings films like 100 times to then go to the Hobbit, it just felt like so fake and like I was watching like a video game compared to like a movie. So I had like big issues with the Hobbit movies for many years, but after rewatching it, like it's fine. My bitterness has gone away now that like that's kind of the world of CGI now that all action movies have. But and even then I think he was doing action or CGI better than like some recent Marvel movies have. So yeah. But yeah, that's all I've been watching. What about you?
I haven't been watching much, and I will make this short because my computer is like
Uh-oh.
2% away from dying.
Oh
Because
no.
I didn't bring my charger because I didn't expect us to be on this long. Um,
I'm sorry.
but no, it's okay. But I saw because I've been trying to find like a show to like binge watch because the
Mm,
whole weekly release thing is maybe healthier but does not work for
yeah.
me. So I've been trying to find like a comfort, like after work kind of show to watch. So I started Death and Other Details on Hulu and
Hmm.
then found out that that was a weekly release, so that didn't exactly solve the issue. But that one's about, it has like Mandy Patinkin, I can't
Mhm.
remember how you say his name. But basically, it's like it's a murder mystery. Everyone is on a boat, and there's like he's like this legendary uh detective, and this woman is there who has the worst wig in all of Hollywood of 2024 so far. And he was like investigating her mother's death, and then he never found out, so she has like this big like daddy issues thing with him. And then they're on this cruise together with these like rich families, and someone dies, and they have to like investigate together and do all these things, and there's all these tips on like what investigation is. So far it's interesting. It's only 2 episodes so far, so we'll see what happens. And then I started watching What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show with the vampire mockumentary, which
Have you ever watched that
not,
before?
no, but it's not really satisfying.
I
The
love What
like
We Do in the
itch.
Shadows.
I feel like it's more of a casual watch than like
It
I have to
is.
watch another episode, which is really what
No,
I'm looking for. So,
it's extremely casual, but
yeah.
I love it whenever I like turn it on. It's so good.
Yeah. So I'm looking for something that like I'm actually compelled to get to the end of, which I haven't found yet. So, we will see, but that's all I've been watching. Um, so Brooke, where can they find you on social media?
They can find me at B_Reese Cup. Where can they find you and the pod?
They can find me at Marriya Schwarz on all social media, and they can find the pod at Remake Hot Take on all social media.
All
Yay.
right. Well, any final words on Percy Jackson?
Um, I'm sorry I'm not a better fan. I feel like I don't know anything about the books anymore. and I would like to, but I don't have time to reread them.
Get the
And also Meredith, give me back
audiobooks.
my book.
Meredith, give Marriya back her book. But I would highly recommend the audiobooks. The narrated by Jesse Bernstein. He
Hmm.
does a really good job. I had to like get used to it after like basically listening only to Harry Potter narrated by Jim Dale, who's like an extraordinary narrator, but Jesse Bernstein does do a really good job once you get into it. So
Nice.
I would highly recommend the audiobooks.